Hi, everyone. Welcome. This next interview is one I conducted early on in the podcast back in April 2024 with a couple called Brittany and Mike. I've decided to separate the conversation. As Brittany left halfway through, she had to pick up their child. So I'm going to use Brittany's story first. It's about 45 minutes long, talking about her experiences with her father, the abuse she suffered, how it's affected her now, and her lead on into becoming a therapist. And we got into a really nice discussion relating to each other about our own experiences. In a separate video, I'll reintroduce Mike, her partner, and allow Mike to tell his story in a separate video, as well as them coming back together later on. In total, I think we recorded for about 3 hours. It was a wonderful conversation, and I hope you enjoy it.
At different stages, but I'm probably jumping ahead now when I say that.
No, that's okay. I should introduce us. Welcome. This is episode 1 of the Past Drives Me Mad podcast. I recently started. My name's Chris. I'm 35 from the UK. Here to talk about mental health trauma, childhood trauma, abuse, mental health diagnoses that we've struggled with and the things that have caused them. And I met Mike and Brittany, I think, 2 weeks ago now, who have been very gracious in coming on to be my first guest. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves.
Sure. Ladies first.
Oh, I was going to ask if you wanted to go first.
Well, you got less time than I do, so you should probably...
Oh, yeah, I guess. I'm Brittany, 36, born and raised United States, I guess Virginia, if that matters. So I'm not from Utah, which is a thing I pride myself on. And I work as a therapist, and I've been doing so for... How long? When did I graduate? Do you remember?
2013.
So
sorry. No, that's when I started. 2016, because 16? We've moved to 2017.
So
I think, or maybe was it 15?
7? We'll just say 8 years, because we'll count that last year of my master's because I was technically working. So 8 years as a therapist, along with my own experience with going through a lot of different kinds of trauma for many years. Your turn.
What's your educational background?
Bachelor's in psychology, master's in counseling psychology.
Okay. And I'm Mike, also not from Utah. I was raised in Massachusetts, part of the United States. New England, for those who are there, which is probably better than Old England in many ways, maybe. That's just me being unnecessarily asshole-ish right now.
He does that. He does that occasionally.
Oh, it's that Boston brashness there. But yeah, and I have an educational background similar to Brittany. I got a bachelor's in social work in 2011, master's in social work in 2014, and I've been working just under a decade now as a therapist as well. So, and also have trauma, albeit quite different from what Brittany has. So yeah, and it is quite unusual for a therapist to meet up and be married like this, but I mean, it works.
I think that's the beauty of this conversation, is that the three of us all have very different traumas, and we can talk about them from our own perspective while also being able to relate. I had 2 sisters, mum and dad. My mum has a lot of narcissistic traits and bullied and abused me in particular. My sister was the golden child, and I had my another younger sister who's probably what you'd call the lost child. And I don't know what to say. I think the mental and physical abuse at the hands of my mum really played on me for a long time, and I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I didn't have a lot of social skills. I was a bit of a loner because I was afraid of people, and that really held me back until I became probably into my late 20s, when I really started to find my way and realize that the things that I'd been through weren't fair and I didn't deserve them. And they also, I was told I was a bad kid. I was told I was evil. I was told I deserved to get hurt. I believed I deserved to get hurt because I saw my sisters being treated better than me. And that plays a big part on your psyche. I don't know if either of you can relate to that.
In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. I am my biological father's only child. So I got all of his attention, but not necessarily in a good way.
You said he was a narcissist, right?
Yeah, I don't know. He's a hard one to figure out. It's hard to go back and try to diagnose him, but I don't know. There were times where it seemed like he lacked in confidence, but there were times where he was extremely confident. So I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. I think a lot of other people would go ahead and say, yes, he was a narcissist. So we can just go ahead and go with that.
He was really good at making sure that no one really got to know the real him.
Mike met him once the week we were getting married. So he didn't get to be around him much to sort that out. But you spent like 2 hours around him or something like that.
Ooh, no, we didn't. We spent maybe 30 minutes total
30 minutes?
in his
Okay.
house. And
I don't know. It's felt like a long time to me.
And he sized me up, and I'm just kind of, just being, the nice guy that I am, trying to be charming or whatever. And then she boldly does something that I don't think she ever did, which was ask him a favor, and straight up said to him, I think it's important to point out that at this point, her parents had been divorced for a good few years. So she straight up asks him, Dad, please come to the wedding. And he says no. And he comes up with all sorts of excuses. Why not? Your mom and her husband make me uncomfortable. The church makes me uncomfortable. I don't know. And she just says, yeah, I never ask anything of you, so please come. And then she asked me and his then wife to step out of the room. And maybe a minute and a half later, I'm downstairs in kind of like the living room area. I'm downstairs, and she's coming down the stairs and says, Mike, we're leaving. And she fills me in saying, well, I don't want to take over. It's your story.
Well, you pretty much said some of it. Yeah. I finally confronted my monster for the first time in my entire life. And I said, have I ever been important to you? Because this is important to me. It's important that you're there to support me in this. I don't understand why you can't do that for me. I've never asked anything from you. And I think he might have brought up that I asked him to help pay for like a band choir trip thing where we were going to competition. And I said, well, that's different because that's money. And you told me you would help. I didn't ask you for that. And he basically said no. And he started laughing. And I said, cool. Well, when you want a relationship with me, you have my number. And I left. And then I threw up.
Yeah. And I think you may mention that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because I was like, oh, that was a lot.
It was a lot.
Purging it out.
And like
how old were you at that point? 19, right?
I was
nearly 20.
I was 19 because
but you were days away from being 20.
I was days away from being 20, but it was a few days before that.
And the reason we know this is because as we mentioned, so last week was the 16th anniversary of our being married together. Her birthday is literally the day before that, and then we spoke with this guy sometime that same week.
It was like the Wednesday or Thursday.
So it's not only the 16th anniversary of us being married, it's the 16th anniversary that we've ceased all contact with that guy. Because as she said, she gave him the condition, you reach out to me when you're ready, and he hasn't yet. And there's been a couple times throughout where she, molded over, asked, like, should I reach out to him? Should I let him know that when our son was born, nearly 13 years ago, she asked, should we let him know that he's a grandfather now? And I said, look, you do what you want. Like, I'm not going to tell you what you're supposed to do with your dad. But what I'm going to say is this. I think that if you reach out to him, even just to tell him, hey, by the way, you're a grandfather now, you got a grandson, his first response is probably going to be, I knew you'd be the one to crack. So,
I mean,
that's not
probably.
It's a power game, isn't it? And what's interesting is that I think a lot of people go through that when you go no contact with a family member, it's already very alien generically. And most people are quite close with their family unless you're like us, where you have that distance. And I think there are a lot of people who debate whether they should go back. Should they do something? Is it my fault? You start to doubt yourself. Did I get it wrong? I mean, I now haven't spoken to my mum for coming up on 3 years, and it'll be the second stretch of about 3 years where I haven't spoken to her. And this time, well, I've got to the point where my mum is not a good influence on my life, and I don't wish anything bad on her. She had too many chances. She failed me too many times, abused me too many times, didn't take care of me like your father. So I understand, and I'm sure a lot of people watching probably understand. I'm really sorry that you understand it like I do, I guess, Brittany.
Yeah. Well, it's just life. It's just a part of life. So you kind of just learn that was a part of your journey. So that's how I see it. I don't see it as I had it better or worse or woe is me or any of that. It's just a part of my journey. This is just how my life turned out to be. And I've had better things come along because of the path I was on. I mean, I met Mike because, well, in part because I wanted to spite him, because I was like, all right, where do I want to go to college? And I wanted to go out west. I wanted to try my hand at it, move away to the other side of the United States. And I didn't ask for any help with money or anything. I applied for scholarships. Oh, well, you'll never make it. You'll come back home. You'll fail. That's all I heard from him. You can't do it. And I was like, I've been hearing that my whole life from you, that I'm worthless, that you wished I was never born, I'd be better off dead, that there was nothing good about me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to do it early, and I'm going to do it with a great GPA, and you're going to see, and you're not going to be invited to the graduation. And I did it. I met Mike there. I finished in 3 years by doing like 20 credit loads, in a bunch of semesters. I finished with a really high GPA, and it impressed the programs I applied to for my master's enough that I pretty much got into all of them, except for one that messed up the paperwork. So,
oh yeah, that did happen. I forgot.
So he doesn't know it, but because of his hatred, I made it further in life.
Didn't that one school reach out like a year later saying like, hey, like, sorry, did you want to reapply or something?
Like, we're interested. I'm like, no, I'm done.
Like, we already moved out of the state.
I'm done.
So sorry.
I met him, and I have my adoptive dad now, who's far and away better than him in every way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Mike's dad or your mum's new partner?
No, so my mom and my bio dad both remarried. So I have a stepmom, and then I had a stepdad, but then he, years after marrying my mom, said, I've been thinking long and hard about this. I realize you're an adult, but what would you think about me adopting you and having my name on your birth certificate? Yeah. And he was really nervous about it because he looks intimidating, but he's like a teddy bear. He's the sweetest guy ever. And he was actually abused in his previous marriage. So it's like him and my mom matched up great. But I just sat there staring at him, and I was like, huh? And he's like, yeah, what would you think about it if I adopted you? And this is the process. And I was like, well, yeah, how is this even a question? Let's do it. And so now he's on my birth certificate, and now I have a whole bunch of siblings from him, my adoptive siblings. So it's like, I really ended up with a better life here, because I'm sure my bio dad is probably miserable.
Yeah, it's a real stark contrast going from a guy who used to become like violently rage-filled and acting out just because of someone leaving some breadcrumbs on the countertop, compared to her dad now. He's the kind of guy that, like, I swear, I think he intentionally goes in, like, when he goes shopping at the grocery store, I think he intentionally goes to the line that has the grumpiest looking cashier. to see if he can cheer them up, and he's usually successful.
He usually has them laughing and smiling by the end. It's crazy. Yeah. He missed his calling. I think instead of being an engineer, he could have been a therapist too.
Mm-hmm. He sounds like a great dude.
Oh, he's awesome. Mm-hmm. No training, and he'll like talk to me, and I'm like, why aren't you a therapist? And he'll just start giggling. It's funny.
Yeah, there's plenty of times where like the family, her side of the family will like have some kind of issue. So they're like, okay, let's meet up. Let's make sure that Mike and Brittany are there so they can offer us their advice. But more often than not, her dad is the one that ends up chiming in, and we'll kind of look at each other thinking, this guy has no formal training, but he's an absolute natural. Like if he had our training, he'd be unstoppable.
And it's weird too, because honestly, if I could have listed everything I wanted in a dad, he checks all of them. It's almost freaky. Mm-hmm. So,
Mike, I'm keen to come to you in a minute, but given that Brittany has to leave shortly, do you mind if we focus on her for a while and carry on this path?
Yeah.
Brittany, I hope we know each other by now that I can just be direct with you.
Sure.
Do you want to tell us about some of the stuff you went through with your biological father? And if it helps you, I can also go first.
No, I can do it. It doesn't bother me to talk about it. So
not anymore, anyway.
Basically, how it started was my mom wanted another child. So I have 2 half siblings, a sister and a brother, and we're pretty far apart. So my sister's the oldest. She's 10 years older than me. And then my brother is 9 years older than me. So my mom, and she had them young. That's her part of the story. But after she got married to my dad, she wanted more kids. And she basically had to beg him to get pregnant with me. So that's kind of where we started. And then once I came into the picture, I honestly don't have any memories of when I was little of him being kind. Like I've seen home movies where it seems like he was playful, but I'm not really sure. Maybe he was just giving attention to the one that was his to spite my other siblings. I'm not really sure. But once they left, I got the full force of his anger and everything. So I wasn't allowed to cry when I was little, even as like a 4-year-old. I wasn't allowed to cry. If I fell down, if I skinned my knee, if I was bleeding, if I was sick and throwing up, you can't cry. It wasn't allowed. If I cried, I was screamed at and called like a baby, all these other kind of things. If my mom comforted me, it was told to her, take the kid off your tit. It's time you weaned her. Or like stop making her into a pussy, stuff like that. When I would play with him, he would start off playing with me. He'd get bored quickly. I wouldn't know that because I was little. So like I'd be cuddling with him, doing something, and one time he got tired of cuddling and he shoved me off the bed. My head hit a dresser and I fell on the floor and I started crying because that's what you do when you get hurt as a kid. Luckily, no stitches or anything or bleeding. I guess I had a hard head. I don't know. So that was one instance. Anytime there was any kind of mess, clean up your shit. This is a pigsty. You're so messy. Why can't you be cleaner? As I got older, my mom would buy me clothes because he couldn't be bothered. But then he'd be like, all right, try them on. I want to see. If they fit, they were too tight and I was a slut. If they were too loose, I looked like a homeless person and we have enough money. Why can't we dress her right?
How old were you when these memories were happening?
That one was around middle school, I think.
So 12, 13?
Yeah.
Your dad called you a slut at 12, 13?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'd never dated anybody, never kissed a boy, never held hands,
Do you think you knew what it meant to be a slut at that age?
Yes, because the schools, you learned a lot riding the bus. So,
yeah.
I learned pretty early. plus sex education for me started in like 4th grade. So you kind of get a feel for that kind of stuff. I don't know. So lots of stuff like that. Lots of I do this now again, but there was a time where I didn't, where I was in choir from like kindergarten on. Singing music has always been a big thing for me and a way to like cope, and I just enjoy it anyway. And so I would sing to myself alone or with other people, or I would hum. And so sometimes I would do that around him, and he'd tell me to shut the hell up. You don't even sound good. It's awful. I don't want to listen to this. Like, work on it and come back better, kind of thing. And he just told me the other week, he's like, hey, what is that song you're humming? And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I was humming. And he's like, yeah, what is it? It sounds good. And I was like, oh, that's new. I guess I'm humming again. Because there was a time where I stopped and I wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I love to sing, and I noticed that I'm more depressed if I'm not singing just on my own. And my mum always used to tell me that I was a terrible singer, and it's not true because my friends hear me sing, my partner hears me sing, and I love to sing, and I'm good at it. But I think it was a way for her to bring me down. I don't know if maybe your father was doing the same thing to you.
Yes. Anything to take me down a peg, even though my confidence, I had none. Let's be honest. I had none growing up. Major introvert. Very difficult for me to make friends because I just kind of kept in my own little bubble. When I was little, I would hide behind my mom and I would start crying if any strangers would be like, oh, your kid is so beautiful. Like, don't hide behind your mom. I would cry and go hide somewhere because I'm like, don't look at me.
Do you think
yeah.
You were afraid of people, or you were ashamed of who you were?
I think one part of it was I was afraid because I didn't know people's motives. Because I've known a lot of people besides my bio dad that were cruel.
Yeah, I mean, like, think of someone who's like been to prison or been to war. They're gonna like if they got unresolved issues, they're gonna view every situation as potentially dangerous. Even when strangers
so I think it was that, and I think it was just natural shyness. Like, I'm just naturally not super outgoing anyway. But yeah, I think it was definitely to make me feel bad. Oh, but that all changed. Well, at least in this instance. In high school, I decided I'm sick of being shy. I'm going to try out for the school musical and see what happens. And so my friend was like, let's do it together. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to do this. It's going to be fine. I'm going to look at the back of the room. I'm going to belt it out. We're going to do this. And so the musical was Annie. I don't know how much you know about musicals, Broadway.
No,
I love it.
I don't know Annie, but I know it is a musical.
Okay, so it's basically like a little orphan girl. She gets adopted by Daddy Warbucks. There's a bunch of other orphans. She's like the leader. Anyway, but I loved that movie. I grew up with it. I was like, yes, let's do this. So I tried out. I belted. I did what I could. My music teacher went all the way back in the auditorium and could still hear me, and I could see him smirking, and I was like, I think I'm doing good. And so we would like do dance numbers and stuff to audition. I made it through the different rounds. Auditions, like, the parts were posted, and I was like, you look. I told my friend, you look. I can't look. I'm probably not even on there, or I'm just like painting scenery or something. I'm part of the crew. She looks and she starts screaming. She's like, oh my gosh, look at it. I can't believe it. You got to look at it. And I was like, okay. I'll look at it. I got the big part. I got Annie.
The titular role.
Not even like backup. It was me. I got the main lead. And then later, man. Yeah. Later that day, my mom calls me because I told her they posted it. I'm getting emotional too. My mom calls me. She's sobbing. She's like, you did it. You got it. I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it. And then, so we go through it. I memorized my script. Like, I was on it. Like, I knew the things before anybody else because I was like, I got to do my best. I've got this. So my mom comes to every single performance, every night. She brought me flowers like at least 2 of those nights. Some of my family came one of the nights. And then there was the night when my bio dad came and he sat in like the front row. And let me tell you, I've never sang Hard Knock Life better because it's all about like, it's a hard knock life for us. And I was like, I sang right to him with my scrub brush choreography on the floor. I was like, yeah, take that. And after it was over, instead of saying, you did great, good job, he comes up to me and basically makes it out like he did all the work. That it was because of him that I was able to do that. Like, and to other people, it was like, I made that. That's all me.
Yeah,
look at what I did.
He took credit.
Look at what I did.
Bastard took credit for it.
And I was like, huh? That's not it. And so I always remember that he, and I did other plays and performances after that, some of which I got the lead, some of which it was, I just wasn't right for the part, which is fine.
Sure.
And he would show up, same song and dance. I made that. It's all me. And I'm like, oh yeah, you did practice, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, hours on end. Oh yeah, you did it. So that was the only time he kind of changed his tune. But again, it was all about him, nothing about me. When people would compliment me, like his friends or family would compliment me, it was like, yeah, I made that.
Can you define how that makes you feel now, thinking back on it, and how it made you feel at the time? Because it must have been very difficult, especially with a musical like Annie, which is, I'm sure, something you could relate to about having a hard knock life and wanting a new family and a new start and a new opportunity. To have what must be one of your first big achievements ridiculed and almost taken away from you like it wasn't yours, it must have hurt.
It did, and I felt like it wasn't mine anymore. I felt like, am I really good? Or, what's going on? It made me doubt myself. And my mom, bless her, she really tried hard. She's like, no, don't believe that. This is all you. You did this. Like, I couldn't do what you're doing. You're doing so well.
In a darkly humorous way, you could credit him in the same way you can credit Joe Jackson with like the greatness of the Jackson 5, and in a darkly cruel, humorous way. But
yeah, there were a couple times.
It's odd because we get our heritage from our environment, and so you wouldn't be here without your dad. But like you said, he's done nothing but put you down and discourage you, and he doesn't put in the hours, and he hasn't been sat in his room lonely and sad, so you sing to yourself, and that's where you get better at singing. And
yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that, mate. Sorry, carry on. I don't want to interrupt you.
But now when I think about it, it is still sad. Like, I feel bad for the younger me and all that she had to go through. But at the same time, I don't know. I still love him. I don't wish any ill will on him. Like, I hope his life is okay. I just don't want him to be a part of mine because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for me to be around him. I don't want that kind of negative energy in my life. Like, I feel good about myself. Like, I can take pride in my appearance and my personality and my talents. And it's not a cocky thing. I feel good about me. Like, I am enough. I am worthy. I don't need anybody to tell me that I am. I know I am. So
good for you.
There comes a point where you just say, you know what? I'm not holding out hope. I'm not holding out any more hope that you can ever be who I need you to be, that you will ever love me. Because people have said like, oh no, he loves you. He loved you. I'm like, no, he didn't. He didn't, because if he loved me, there are parts that make up love that he could have given to me. It would have been unconditional. I would have had his respect. I would have had his understanding, his acceptance, his appreciation. And I had none of that. It was all critique, criticism. You're not good enough. You're ugly. You're worthless. You know, there was a time, and it has stuck with me. Like, I will still have dreams about it, where I had a smart mouth with him. I readily admit that. However, his response was inappropriate, and I will never forgive him for it, which was he came in, and he was a big guy. He was like a bodybuilder. So very muscular, like 6'2", 6'1", 6'2" guy.
Had a passing resemblance to Tom Selleck, if that helps with the visual.
But like a bulky Tom Selleck, like old days Arnold Schwarzenegger, Tom Selleck looks.
Bigger than a young girl.
Yes, far bigger. This was like 7th or 8th grade. So I smart off to him. My mom is not home, which is already dangerous territory. He comes into my room, and he's mad because the windows are open and the neighbors could hear, which I don't know if they ever heard. Comes in, basically power bombs me to the floor, holds me down by my throat, and squeezes. And I'm like, oh shit, like I can't breathe. I'm starting to see black. I'm like, I think I'm going to die here today. I look at him, and his eyes, you know how when somebody is happy, their eyes will like sparkle? He had that. He had a sparkle in his eyes. My tears are starting to come out, and it was probably because it was traumatic, but also because there's something about when you can't breathe, like everything starts to come out of your body. And he smiled. And the harder I cried, the more air it took up. And then he started laughing. And I was like, I'm going to die. And I was like, you know what? I don't want that to be the last thing I see. If I'm going to die, I'm going to control what I see. So I imagined that my mom was standing in the doorway, and that she was looking at me with a serene look on her face, with a little bit of a smile, holding her hand out.
You didn't always know it was your imagination, though.
I didn't, though. I imagined it so hard that I believed that really happened, that she was really standing there. And then years down the line, she had to tell me, I wasn't even home. I was never there. I would have stopped that if I was there. And I was like, oh, crap, you're right. You were never there. But I was like, this is not going to be the last thing I see if I'm going to die. I want it to be her face, because I know she loves me, and that she would protect me, and I feel safe with her. Which is odd, because she couldn't protect herself from him. But that's one memory I will always remember him by. That always sticks with me. Whenever, and he did that whenever it was like a truly like vicious moment, there was always a smile or a laugh. Like the time where I asked you to leave the room the week of our wedding, when I was talking to him, and I was almost in tears, but I was like, I'm not crying in front of him again. Right. He laughed. Yeah. And he laughed when you were in the room too, right? I'm pretty sure he did. We talked about something and he chuckled.
I remember a few key points. I know he was trying to, he was trying to do the whole charming, like, like, oh yeah, you're marrying my daughter kind of thing, and trying to be charming, but also like just an edge of intimidation, but like, better take care of my daughter. But it's like,
but I mean, that
I knew the person he was before going in to meet him, so I was just trying to keep it cool, and
my takeaway from him is that monsters can hide in plain sight. They can put up a good front so no one knows that they're a monster except you, because they show a good face to everybody else. That, he was violent. I mean, I got shoved up against walls, thrown across rooms, shoved off of beds. My head was hit. I had bruises, of course, where no one could see. I was put down constantly. I was made to feel like I meant nothing to him and nobody, and no one would ever love me because he didn't, because I was a mistake. Those were the takeaways from him. Violence, hatred, and just viciousness. That's all. Like there was no love, there was no hope, there was I to be quite honest, and I still feel this way, I have a odd relationship with my adoptive dad because I don't know what it's supposed to be. I don't know what a father-daughter relationship is supposed to be like. I have no clue. So I'm working from scratch, and I'm like, I've told my adoptive dad, I was like, I know I'm weird. I know I'm weird about this. I know it's on my side of things. You haven't done anything. I know this is me. And he's like, no, it's not weird. You're just figuring it out. It's okay. We'll do it together, one step at a time. Do it at your pace. Like, I'm here, you know, we'll do what you need to do, kind of a thing.
The trauma really does make it difficult to act on rationale, because like up here, she knows, oh, he'll accept me and he'll love me, but it's in here that she fears the rejection.
Well, and it's not just my bio dad. It's like adult men who, well, he did what he did, but there were adult men in my life who disappointed me in one way or another, that did wrong by me one way or another. Betrayal, whatever the case may be. And so it's like, can I trust you? And I know I can. Up here, I know I can. It's just in here where it's like, can I though? Can I take that step? So it's like a gradual process where I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you this. We'll see what you do with that. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit more. We'll see what you do with that. And it's not a test. It's more of a, I'm going to give you this piece of myself now, and now this piece, until gradually the puzzle will be filled in.
I mean, I would say you could, I don't think it's unfair to consider it a test, but it's not with any kind of manipulative malice intent or whatever. I hate to interrupt, but like, you do need to get going. Go. And also, I'm parked behind you. Are you taking the Nissan, or do I need to move
I'll just take your car.
Okay, that's fine. You got.
I just want, before you go,
he wants to.
Oh.
I just want to say thank you for what you've done so far, because it's very brave to open up like that, and I think a lot of people would be very grateful to hear your story, and I'm incredibly grateful that you trusted us to tell it. So thank you, and I'm proud of you, and I'll see you later.
Okay. Yeah. See you in like a half hour. All right.